Let me show you how simple it is to make sauerkraut. People keep asking about this, and it's no more difficult than slicing cabbage, adding salt, sticking it in a jar. There's a few things you need to get right, such as the proportion of salt to cabbage, but all you need equipment wise. I'm going to use a food processor because it's really quick to slice the cabbage. You can also just use a good knife, a nice sharp knife, and a wooden chopping board. Wooden because we don't want microplastics ending up inside of us from the chopping on the plastic board. Remember that, guys. My name's Emma Voisey. I'm a health coach and I am passionate about health and food and a holistic way of life and doing things as naturally as possible in order to keep us in good shape for our entire lives so that we can live independently when we're old and not have to rely on somebody else to look after us. So, sauerkraut. This is how easy it is. First thing you want to do is, and you do need a scale. I've got a little digital scale here. I'm going to weigh the cabbage because I need to know what the proportion is of cabbage to salt, because it's important to get that proportion right. So that's just over 500 grams. That one is just under 700. And this, last but not least, this red one is just under 800. So 2% salt. For those of you who don't work in grams, I'll put the conversions into ounces and pounds down below. So I use Redmond real salt. You can buy this on Amazon. The price has gone up quite considerably lately because obviously everybody's buying it because it's so good. It's mined in America. It does taste good, and it comes from volcanic eruptions sealed an ancient pristine ocean beneath a layer of protective ash in what is now North America. And it's the only brand of sea salt harvested from this ancient deposit, which means it hasn't got any pollution in it. This was pre-pollution. If you use sea salt, which we always thought of as natural and good for us, unfortunately the sea is filled with poison and microplastics and all sorts of other chemicals that humans have put in there. So that's why we can't trust sea salt anymore, unfortunately. First things first, I'm going to weigh my salt. I want 40 grams of salt. So 40 grams. Now you can use up to 5% solution of salt. If you go any higher than that, your chances are you're going to start killing off the beneficial bacteria, which you don't want. So I've gone for just over 40 grams. Let's put that to one side. So that's what that looks like. So big sharp knife. Now the thing with cabbages is they are fantastic at cleaning the ground in which they are grown. They are really good at soaking up toxins. They're like little sponges, which means that if you buy your cabbage and it's not organic, so that means it's been sprayed with nasty chemicals, growth enhancers, pesticides, weed killers, whatever else they spray all over our food. If you don't buy organic, where you don't have all those things sprayed on it, those chemicals, they're not washed off the plants, they are in the plants. And these plants particularly, these cabbages, are brilliant at cleaning the soil, so they suck all that stuff into them. And that means when you eat it, it's all going into you. So I don't want to fill my body up with unnecessary toxins. There's enough in our environment that we can't avoid. So I'm just cutting out the really woody central stems. Yeah, so that's why I always buy organic wherever possible, and especially for something like this. Although they do say that fermenting vegetables, potentially it reduces some of the pesticide burden or the chemical burden. I'm not prepared to leave that to chance. I don't want pesticides and chemicals in any of my food, even if it's been fermented. So, right, there's my cabbage chopped up. Now, before I did that to the cabbage, I meant to say this at the beginning. I took some whole leaves so that I can use those for the tops of my jars, which I will show you at the end. So there's my cabbage all chopped up. Those chunky, stalky bits. I'll take those down to the horse. She loves cabbage. Here we go. I brought you some cabbages. There we go. What do you think? Oh, look lovely. Nice. You like cabbage, don't you? So you may be thinking, yeah, but this is a bit of a hassle. Why don't I just buy my sauerkraut? And you can buy it. I've got some here, look. Organic sauerkraut infused with juniper berries. The difference is, I find, and I've bought a few different brands now, and I've heard this from other people as well. The difference is that when you buy it, it's a bit mushy. My sauerkraut is crispy and crunchy and ends up tasting more like a really delicious coleslaw. Then it can be a bit mushy, the bought stuff. Now make sure you've got really clean hands, because what you're going to do now is I'm going to sprinkle half of that salt approximately onto there. Let it goes right through. And the salt stays on it. You're not going to rinse it. And the Koreans make kimchi, which is a sort of spicy sauerkraut, and as well as other fermented vegetables. And they put a mouthful of fermented veg in with every mouthful of meat that they eat. So it's kind of like a bit of sauerkraut, bit of fermented veg, bit of protein, bit of whatever else they're eating, bit of rice. And the reason we eat this stuff is because it's super good for the gut. It produces lactobacteria, which is amazing for your gut bacteria. Increases the numbers of positive beneficial bacteria that live in your gut, which is, there's actually more bacteria in our guts than there are numbers of cells in our body. Imagine that. That's quite a lot of bacteria. I think I've got too much cabbage here for this bowl. Might have to go into two. The rest of the salt's going to go onto there. And if you look back through history, before we had refrigeration, this was how foods were preserved. I mean, before refrigeration, and ever since then, we've all been getting freaky about things going mouldy or going off if they're not in the fridge. Everyone's so panicky about that these days and so worried about bacteria. But there are beneficial bacteria. Not only are they beneficial, they're absolutely essential. And if you feed your gut bacteria, if you feed the beneficial bacteria in your gut and increase their numbers, and they increase pretty quickly. You can change the landscape of your own microbiome within a few days if you change your diet and start adding in stuff that those bacteria like to eat. And then you don't feel so hungry, because your bacteria tell you you're hungry, but they can't tell you what they're hungry for. So you feel hungry, you eat the donut or the Snickers bar, you still feel hungry because you're not feeding the beneficial bacteria. Then you're just feeding the pathogenic bacteria, who are the sugar-loving ones. Actually, it's making a bit of a mess, but I'm just going to keep going because it's starting to, you may be able to see that, starting to get really wet. I'm just massaging the salt through every bit of it. Use your hands. You can put gloves on if you want to. I'm going to end up with purple hands here. Never mind. Yeah, so before we all got freaky about food preservation and having to keep everything in the fridge or the freezer or throwing it away because it had gone off, we preserved food with salt. We preserved food by burying it under the ground. We preserved food in jars. We pickled. We dried food. We took raw meat and dried it to eat later so that we had enough food to get us through the wintertime. Because if you grow vegetables and they're all ready in September, October, November, whenever your harvest is wherever you live in the world, and then you end up with a glut, because that's what always happens when you grow veg. You end up with too many of the things that grow easiest, and you need some way of preserving them. You can't put them all in the fridge. Most people haven't got that much fridge space. So that's where pickling and fermenting all came into their own. And it's a brilliant way to preserve food. It's getting really wet now, so the salt draws the juices out of the cabbage. So because when I start squashing this into my jars in a minute, all that juice is going to come out even more. All right, messy hands, messy counter. I'm going to clean up this mess and then pack it into my jars. So I've chopped up my cabbage, I've cleared up the counter, and that means that it's been sitting there now for about 10 minutes and it's got even more juice. You can leave it if you want to, you can leave it for as long as you want. I've got some here which I prepped a couple of days ago. I was going to make it into kimchi, but I never got around to it, so I might just now add it to this one. That's Chinese cabbage, so it's a bit slightly different variety to these round ones. Right, jars. I like to use a big jar and see how much I can pack into it. You are literally going to take handfuls. Obviously, the wider the neck of the jar, the easier this is. You're just going to push that into there, and every so often use your fist and squash it down. And you're going to pack it. You're really packing this down. And that is about enough. I want to leave a little bit of a gap because I'm going to put a weight on top. I don't want it coming right up to the top, because then when it starts to ferment, if it gets a bit excited, you can find that your jars start overflowing. If you come in close, you can see the juice. See that there? See the juice with the froth up the top? Of pushing it down as much as I can, get underneath that juice. And you don't need to add any vinegar, because the tart flavour that you're going to get is the area makes its own vinegar, makes its own fermenting juice. So people think that there's vinegar added. It's really simple. It's as simple as salt and cabbage. There we go. Right, it's pretty much under the, I want everything to be under the juice, because anything that sticks out is likely to go, that's where you will get mold forming. And we don't want that. It isn't going to kill you. You can pick off any little tiny bits of mold if you catch them in time and discard them, but better still, don't get any mold to start with. So if I just take a little bit of filtered water here, just a little, just about a centimetre there. And then I'm going to take one of these cabbage leaves that I saved. That one's about the right size. I'm just going to pop that on top and kind of like tuck it in, like I'm tucking him into bed. So that you can see the purple juice coming out over the top. And to cap that off, I'm going to add a weight. Now, I do have some glass pebble weights, especially for fermenting. You can buy them easily on Amazon. I'll give you a link below. I've just used a pebble there. It's a special volcanic rock that somebody gave me. Right, there we go. That's just going to weight the top down, keep everything underneath the level of the juice. Just give it a tiny top up more of water, and that's it. The lid is going to go on. You can get special fermenting jars with breathable lids. I've never found that to be necessary. I'm just going to seal that and put it on the side. And within 5 days to a week, you can start eating it. But oh my God, it tastes so much better if you leave it. And you can wait for a month. It doesn't go off, it just improves. Just going to make another one up here. It just gets better with age. And that is how easy it is to make your own sauerkraut. Like, it's not much more than making coleslaw, except you're going to add salt, two 2 to 5% salt by weight. Remember, I used just over 2%. Leave it in the jars for minimum 5 days, but if you can wait longer, it will be even more beneficial. It'll be even better for you. I keep my jars just on the worktop so I can keep an eye on them, right here next to the sink. Every couple of days, 3 or 4 days, I'll open them up and jiggle out any accumulated, just literally like that. I'm going to jiggle out any accumulated gases and let those out, because sometimes they get very fizzy and then they can start fizzing over. It doesn't matter if they do, you just wipe it up. It's not like an emergency or anything. And they just sit there. Some people suggest putting them in a dark cupboard. I don't think that makes any difference whatsoever. So they sit there where I can keep an eye on them. I taste the sauerkraut, start tasting it after about a week. But like I say, I like to leave them as long as possible so that they get really mature and really full of bacteria. And that is the neighbour's dog barking. Thanks for that, Urko. And that is how easy it is to make your own sauerkraut at home. You know exactly what's in it. You can choose the ingredients, specifically which salt you're going to use, which cabbages you're going to use. And it's really cheap, much cheaper than the shop bought varieties. It's crunchy, much nicer than the shop bought stuff, which tends to be a bit mushy. And if you liked this video and you're interested to know more about fermented vegetables, have a look at my kimchi video, how to make kimchi, which is a Korean cousin to sauerkraut, sauerkraut's spicy Korean cousin. I think the longer you ferment them, the more beneficial they become over time. I mean, I've got one here which I made before Christmas. That was my Christmas sauerkraut. It's got some spices in it. It still tastes great. It's still going strong. We keep it in the fridge. We use a clean spoon each time we take some out, and it just goes on for months. Once you put it in the fridge, it could probably last in there. I'd like to say it would last for, if you always used a clean spoon, a year easily. I mean, you're going to know if it's gone off. Trust your nose. That's how I always use the nose test. If I think something doesn't smell right, then I won't eat it. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Share this video with a friend who needs to know how to make excellent, beneficial, super good for the gut sauerkraut. And I will continue to bring you more health related videos. Thank you for watching. See you next time.